Hello and welcome to week 2 in research methods. And here in week 2, we're going to be talking about ethics. And these are the rules and regulations for how we conduct scientific experiments, in particular using animals and human beings and whatnot. The not so part of the ethics regarding records and looking at archival data, those kinds of methods are still relevant, but they have a lot more to do with just focusing on privacy. Now, the discussion in today's in this week's work is about animal studies. It remains controversial that science, including psychology, uses animal models in order to conduct experiments. There's ethical considerations regarding that. Some people consider it cruelty. Other people consider it necessary in order to understand the results of, particularly when we're looking at medicines and the cosmetic industry and all that stuff. So, having an open discussion about that, about the your feelings and understandings about that, but also looking into, trying to get both sides of the story here for you to understand when and where it may be necessary for us to use animals. The notion of using animals really comes from the evolutionary perspectives within the field of psychology, meaning evolution is defined that human beings, as very, very complex animals, evolved from simpler forms of the same thing. Are we smaller brains, not as complex brains, but still brains developed over time into what we now have, the Homo sapien brain. The idea is that because there's that line of connection between us and what we might refer to as lower animals, lower on the evolutionary scale, by studying how those brains work, we can extrapolate how human brains work. Now, we know there's limitations to this, but in the history of psychology and other sciences, it has provided an opportunity to do explorations that would be unheard of in the field if we were just experimenting on human beings. Now, it still raises concerns. It still raises concerns that we raised animals simply to kill them and examine how their brain works. That's all of those issues are still relevant. They're still going on. And the field of psychology continues to grapple with that particular dilemma. In the quiz, what I'm asking you to do is to consider a little experiment that a professor wants to do. This is a sample. They want to do an experiment on the use of cell phones in the classroom and track how they use them and whatnot. Now, this should, even though probably everyone listening to this probably understands that cell phones are now in the classroom and how we use them to either better our education or possibly as a barrier and distraction to our education, maybe a tool for dishonesty. We kind of want to know, what are people doing with those cell phones when they're in the class? Is it productive? Is it helping them? But it also raises issues of privacy. So I ask a few questions of you to relate to how do you think that study could be done in an ethical manner. So you picture yourself as a consultant, let's say, of the experimental design that this teacher wants to do, and you say, well, this is what I think you should probably look at, and answer those questions. Finally, well, not finally, but the final for this chapter, we have the assignment where I introduce you to the American Psychological Association's Code of Ethics. Now, what I'm asking you to do is go all the way to, I'm going to bring it up here, at the beginning of this chapter. What you see is there's a link to the 20 most unethical experiments in psychology. We know that these studies have problems. That's why they're in that list. So there's ethical concerns with these studies. So if you go to that link, it's going to open up. And here we have the 20 most unethical studies in psychology. So we can look at these, each one of these, and we can try to understand what went wrong with this. You identify the ethical problem or problems for each one of these studies. Pick one study and identify the ethical problem with that study. Now, to make the connection to the code of ethics, what I want you to do is access the APA Code of Ethics. Now, there's a link for that in the course book, and I have it here on the website here. It'll open up to here. This Ethical Principles of Psychologists and Code of Conduct, amended and updated to 2017. I think they're working on a new version. Now we scroll down here, and what you're going to see, you see ethical standards, record keeping, assessment. A lot of this is for clinical applications, but right there we see research and publication, where we have informed consent. These chapter 8, and it goes right through all of these. These chapter 8 refers to research ethics. What I want you to do is I want you to identify which of these, maybe more than one, have been violated by the experiment that you're looking at. Keeping in mind that these might not even existed yet. But if this experiment was proposed today, how would we shoot it down with an ethical problem to keep it from happening? So I want you to be able to look at the study and write up the paper in accordance with the rubric about which codes were violated, making that connection between the identified ethical problems with the study. So kind of a fun way to look at some of the darker history of psychology, and then look at the ethical standard that we now have that would have prevented that from happening. In fact, it is not necessarily too far of a stretch to think that some of these experiments actually inspired the development of that particular ethical standard. We never want to do that again. Okay, so that's this week. What we are engaged in right now in terms of your final project is you should be actively looking for the article that you want to replicate and begin communicating with me. I have heard from a couple people, but this needs to be ramped up. I changed the timeline a little bit to reflect that we have a couple weeks to get this done. It's a very, very important first step in knowing which article you are actually going to replicate. It involves communication directly with me via email, and I will be responding to the couple people that have done that. Go into the special assignment section, read the source article part of that assignment, and get going on finding your article that is going to inspire your particular project. I give you the resource of the in-brief notations that are within the Monitor in Psychology. Already people are moving beyond that, and they're going into other areas that they want to explore. That is perfectly fine. Your goal is to find a research project that you think you can really sink your teeth in, and you're going to design your own version of that within the pragmatics that we have, that this is a community college, it's online, it's hard to get subjects because we don't have dorms, and we only have a semester to propose it. And then next semester, when we take statistics, you're going to actually do the project and collect data and go on like that. So Please get started on that. Take that as a personal challenge for me to get something to me, to get that dialogue going. I'm going to be tracking the dialogue for each person in a spreadsheet, making sure we're all on task. We're all making sure that by the time, I think it's in a couple weeks here, the 20-something of September, you can write that paper that indicates which study you're going to actually be doing. And so which study you're going to be using as your source article. So big week, but this is the stuff. This is what's great about research. It's work. It's great work. It's fun. Please make effort to get that started as soon as possible and get those dialogues going. Meanwhile, have a great week. Here, the second week, it's still summery, so we can still enjoy all that before the snow flies. Shouldn't have said that. Now, have a great week, and I will see you online. Take care.